Hi, Jutta.
My microphone even closer to my mouth, but it's clear enough like this. Then I will.
You're very quiet, Jutta.
Yes. Hello.
Is this better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep it down here.
Thank you. Hi, Octavi.
Hi, Adrian. Hi, everyone. Jean is here as
Hi.
well.
And good afternoon,
Hi,
Craig.
How are you? Good afternoon.
Varney, shall we make a start?
We have to synchronize with Salma in the room, Juliette.
We're ready once you are.
Oh, great, Salma, thanks. Thanks. I didn't see you, so I was a little in the dark. Okay, so so great. Thank you very much. Thank you for this great panel discussion earlier. I think definitely, Adrian, you can start if Salma gives you the cue. It's okay on my side.
Thanks, Veronique. Salma, just let me know when you're ready and we will kick off.
You can start.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I love these hybrid events. They're a whole new world, and I think they're really quite exciting. And I'm very sorry that as a panel, we're not all with you in Cairo today. I think that would have been even more fantastic. But we make the best of the opportunities we have. And thank you, Veronique, for starting us off. It's a real pleasure to be here this afternoon. And in a kind of a slightly sadder note, though, this is a time when more than a quarter of the world's population still lacks access to safely managed water supplies. So in that context, it's a real pleasure to introduce this panel session this afternoon on the theme of social innovation, to think about how social innovation can help us to address the challenges that we face. And I'm really pleased that Water JPI, Prima and ASRT took the initiative to arrange such a timely session, and we thank you all for that initiative. With the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal of achieving universal water supplies fast approaching now, less than 9 years away, new approaches are urgently required, particularly as we've heard today, when set in the context of climate change and of rapid rates of urbanization. And in this panel, we will consider how strengthening Africa-EU cooperation in the water research and innovation can help boost social innovation and help countries attain their goals, particularly under the Social Development Goal 6, or Sustainable Development Goal 6. Now, my name is Adrian Healy, and I'm a UKRI Future Leaders Fellow at Cardiff University. And I'm really pleased to be joined in this panel by Ute Ven of the Africa-EU Innovation Alliance for Water and Climate, Afri Alliance, of IHE Delft and of the University of Gothenburg. John Albergel of the French Institute of Research for Sustainable Development. By Octavio Quintana of the Partnership for Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean Area, Prima, and also by Craig Sheridan of the University of Witwatersrand and the Principal Investigator of the Urbwater project. I'll ask each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves in a moment. But if I can move to the next slide, please, which is a nice set of pictures of all of our panelists, and we'll just move through that one to the next one. Because I think, as a brief introduction, it's really important that we consider how social innovation can be strengthened through Africa-EU cooperation. And we'll have a real opportunity to discuss this further in the plenary session, which will follow this conversation, this panel at the moment. So do please send through your thoughts and your questions into the chat function, and we'll try to take these on board later in the session. We'll also be running some short polls up to the panel, and I'd really value your inputs into these as well when we put those up. But I think the first question is, what do we mean by social innovation? Social innovations may involve new technologies, but they can also involve innovations in the institutional frameworks that govern water supplies. And social innovation often lies at the heart of developing new approaches to water management as well, something this Cairo Water Week talks a lot about from there. And when talking about social innovation, I think people often include 4 different elements within all of this. At its simplest, it's often about innovations that focus on tackling a human need or a societal challenge, such as securing safely managed water supplies or promoting water efficiency. But equally, it can also include innovations in social institutions, such as those that promote universal rights to access safely managed water supplies. For some, though, those goals are not enough. Social innovations can also involve changing the way that goods and services are delivered in order to overcome inequalities in access to safely managed water supplies. How do we manage to make sure that water supplies are affordable to all, for example, that no one is excluded, that no one is left behind? But equally, social innovations can also be user-led to ensure that new technologies or products or services are appropriate to their settings. But that's enough for me at the moment. I'd like now to move to our panel, and Ute, perhaps I could start with you. Could you briefly introduce yourself, please, and share what social innovation means to you and your organizations, please? Thank you. You're on mute, Ute.
Yeah, I got a signal immediately. Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you also to the Water JPI for the invitation to participate in this great workshop. Social innovation, yeah, I'm a social scientist. And amongst the many hats that you mentioned in my introduction, Afri Alliance is one of the projects that I coordinated. It was a substantial effort over 5 years, brought together 16 partners from Europe and Africa to bring international cooperation to a very practical level by producing a network of networks. And we focused our efforts in that collaboration entirely around the concept of social innovation. And I think in many respects, you know, how we've defined it in AfriAlliance overlaps with the dimensions that you introduced. But let me just point out that we broadly distinguished, on the one hand, the outcomes, the societal challenges that we think the social innovation process is there to address. And in the AfriAlliance context, we spent some effort to really drilling down, okay, in the context of climate change and the impacts of water resources, what are the challenges, societal challenges that African stakeholders are really facing? These are 6 that you see on the screen: water security, food security, energy security, public health, ecosystems management, but also the nexus between water, energy, food, which gets additional pressure from climate change. So that's the one hand, the one's coin, let's say, of social innovation. What are we getting out of it as a society? What are the specific challenges we're addressing? And similarly, just as important, arguably even more important, is the way how we get there. It's the process of how we do this. Now, for some people, when they hear the term social innovation, then they say, oh, that's everything social, so you don't talk about technology. Well, actually, we do. But we think focus on technology alone is not enough. We look at technology as one of 4 dimensions that we need to carefully bring together in a multi-stakeholder process, along with the governance structures, the institutions you also mentioned. There are either institutions holding us back to the uptake of technological solutions and their upscaling, or they're actually triggering changes in the different levels of governance. Similarly, capacity development is an important area, particularly when we're talking about the African context, where we see vastly different capacity levels at individual level, organization level, societal level, etc. So the capacity development component in the social innovation process is important. And last but not least, we thought it was really crucial also to not forget the private sector. As emergent as it may be in many parts of Africa, we need a clearer roadmap for entrepreneurs, for innovation, really to also have a commercial dimension. So I hope in a nutshell this has served to introduce it to how in the AfriAlliance context we have thought about social innovation. I'm very happy to contribute later about how to do this with co-design methodologies from some of my other projects.
Thanks, Uta. That's been really helpful. So, Jean, if you could introduce yourself as well, please, and share how you would see social innovation in this context. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I am also very delighted to be here, even if I would prefer to be on the Nile shore or near the pyramids, but the time is like this. My name is Jean-Albert Gel. I am a scientist in hydrology. I joined the French Research Institute for Sustainable Development in 1979, a long time ago, and spent most of my working life posted in Africa: Mali 2 years, Burkina Faso 4 years, Senegal 8 years, Tunisia 6 years, Kenya 6 years, and South Africa 4 years. My research addresses more hydrology in the cultivated areas. Yes, I am now in Montpellier at the LISA lab, Soil Agrosystem Hydrosystem Interaction Lab, and I worked for the UN Global Sustainable Development Report, GSDR 2019, from 2016 to the publication of this report. I will try to define for me social innovation. I am not a social scientist. I will be shorter and perhaps simpler than Uta. For me, a social innovation is a new solution that generates positive impact for society and the environment, regardless of its primary purpose. Social innovation develops new response to poor or inadequate solution for citizens in all sectors: environment, water, food, energy, housing, health, mobility, etc. Supported by various actors, social innovation provides effective solutions to complex issues. It's like this I see what is a social innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I think it's great to see these different backgrounds coming together as well. Craig, you have a very you have a project-based focus in some ways, as well as your work at the university. I mean, perhaps you could introduce yourself to the audience, but also share your thoughts about what social innovation means on the ground, please.
Well, thanks, Adrian. Hi, everyone. I'm Craig. I'm a professor at Wits University, which is based in Johannesburg. I'm a chemical engineer by training, although I currently work in the School of Geography, Archaeology, and Environmental Studies. And I direct the Center in Water Research and Development at our university. I'm also the PI on a water JPI project, which is why I'm here. So thank you to the JPI for the invitation. I particularly like your sort of fourth definition, which is around user-led innovations to ensure new technologies, products, and services are appropriate to their setting. And I like that as a concept, because especially as an engineer working in Africa, trained in a Western way, I work in a context which is very much not Western based. My UrbWet project is installing grey water treatment wetlands in an unplanned settlement in an urban megacity slum context. And we can't really implement Western solutions in this context. And we've really had to engage and work hard around understanding how people interact with technologies and how we interact with people and how different institutions interact with each other in order just to build systems, never mind to study them. So for me, this is how I would define social innovation, is around these interplays of different systems and trying to maintain a set of values in which one discipline doesn't take dominance over another. So I guess that's in a nutshell how I would envisage it.
Thanks, Craig. I think it's really fascinating, the kind of the various disciplines that we're all representing here at the moment. But I'm also pleased you've highlighted the importance of context within this as well, and the significance of place. Octavi, could you introduce yourself, please, and just share with us your thoughts on social innovation, what it means to you, please?
Hi, thank you, Adrian. I'll briefly introduce myself. I am Octavi Quintana. I am a physician by training. I did some, dealing with patients for 8 years, and then I moved to management. I've been in management in health mainly, and in research and innovation, both in Spain, in the Council of Europe, and at the European Commission for several years. Now I am the director of PRIMA. On what this social innovation means for me, in fact, I think that the previous speakers, especially Jutta, did a very comprehensive definition. The only thing maybe I like to underline here, because I think it's at the core of our discussion here today, is that when dealing with water scarcity, in which there are many competing demands, I mean, it's obvious that we need a social debate to at least understand which are these competing demands and to try to to put them, set priorities and hierarchy them. So, and this is where social innovation has a real meaning. The fact that we engage in these discussions as many end users as possible, and to try to reach agreements, if at all possible, among the different competing demands and also the different supply offers that exist, both conventional and unconventional. Thanks.
Thanks, Octavi. And I think you highlight what Uta was highlighting also earlier about the importance of the values that we bring out within all of this as well. John, I want to turn to you, if I may, with a question, and drawing on the depth and the breadth of your experience that you shared with us a moment ago. There is a rich heritage of social innovation across Africa already. And I wonder what you feel that governments and international bodies can do to further promote the development or the adoption of social innovations addressing water-related SDGs. What are your thoughts on that, please?
Yes, of course. You see that social innovation can have a crucial role to play in all the aspects of water management and water issues. And I guess that government, all stakeholders, international, need to cooperate. And I see that among all the SDGs, the SDGs, and particularly the SDG 6, it's concerned firstly management and equitable water supply. We need to use a lot of data on quantity and quality, on water pricing also. We can have some social innovation, so some innovation about how to keep the data, to use the data, but also some other innovation to how to use this data for example, supplying equitably different sectors, or to define a water pricing. I guess also that this is very important, and almost for Africa, to have some solution and some innovation in water management in transboundary basins with a view of equity and peace, because as you know, Africa, there is 53 countries and one continent with a lot of shared basins. We can see also that innovation and social innovation is very important for risk management and citizen protection. This is, we need some more and more sophisticated technology and monitoring for monitoring flooding or drought, and we need some innovation. Protection of surface water and groundwater resources, quantity and quality, and as said by Octavie, how to protect these resources when we have to share it, and when you have not enough. We have also innovation in distribution and sanitation in smart city context or in rural context, and we need a lot of combination of artificial intelligence, interconnected object, and other technology. You have also development of reuse water, promoting the circular economy, and how the society can reuse more it can the water, and in which sector. You have also the development of new resources who need some innovation, like desalination, recovery of water from the air, or other things. I see that it's very complex and very large scope to have innovation.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Jean. There's a very comprehensive set of things going on, and you've highlighted a large number of different directions of travel that one might take from there. But one of the valuable things I think you highlighted was the significance of cooperation, of management, of innovations in the world of pricing, for example, not just technologies. Octavie, if I could turn to you for a moment, moving aside from the thinking about improved technologies where a lot of debate takes place, where do you think there may be areas of water governance where you see good examples or potential for social innovation to improve the situation, and where EU-Africa cooperation can help?
Well, in fact, it's true that to tackle the water issue, the water question, the water that mainly is water scarcity, at least in Africa and in the Mediterranean, we need both technological and non-technological innovations. So we need a common approach. And in fact, social innovation could help us to prevent and mitigate conflict and competition, which is, as again, I underline, the essence of the issue. So that's, first of all, I like to repeat what John said in the sense of gathering data without which it's impossible to do anything. Or even if you do something, you will never know which was the result of what you do, of your interventions or your governance. And also trying to have, as much as possible, all the sectors competing on the demand side to dialogue and to have a social debate to ascertain which are the priorities for the society at large in that sense. So I think that, and this was mentioned also by Jutta, that it is not just important to listen to agriculture and industry and tourism and urban users, but the link among them. So the relationship among them, and she mentioned the WEFE, that for us, for Prima, is an essential future point or focus of our activities. We want, as much as possible, projects to deal with the relationships among sectors and very especially for WEFE. So for us, this is very important. It is also important on the supply side to make the necessary discussions to be or to have more social acceptance on the use of non-conventional waters, that it is more and more important. And although it has resistances, of course, but I think that this is a center of what we need to do, or at least to center our discussions. And I think I'll finish that we need to make a big effort in the culture. And the culture means a culture of decision makers, of the culture of different sectors, and the culture of users and end users. So citizens and end users of all sorts. So, and this means a mind shift, a cultural change that we need to approach slowly, but stating very clearly that either we tackle this issue in a holistic way, in an integrated way, or there will be no solutions at all.
Thanks, Octavi. Craig, can I turn to you for a moment, please? On a similar question, I mean, you gave us an example earlier of your work with the wetlands. I mean, how important is water governance in your mind as an element of social innovation?
Yeah, I think the governance part is critical. Part of the reason we're doing the work is because we have governance challenges in all forms. When I'm working specifically at my UrbWet site, I'm working in a context where Western modes of governance don't necessarily even apply. We have very interesting concepts of land ownership and the way the community that we're working in has evolved and changes with rapidity, which is almost not believable. It's a huge challenge to what we do, because when we think we know what's happening, if we go back next week, it's not the same. So governance is a major challenge. We have we also have quite a lot of unusual dialogues around governance in these contexts, because we have such a diverse population where we have I've had politicians come to the site to say these people don't own this land, and it's really an irrelevant concept if people are there already. And we're also trying to we're trying to change the dialogue of what is an informal settlement, and we're trying to use the words unplanned settlements as opposed to informal, because in many instances these are no longer informal settlements. These are not tin shacks anymore. These are brick houses with steel windows, steel window frames and glass windows. And that's not informal. What it is, though, is it's unplanned. And that's a different discussion altogether, which means that we need to be fairly innovative in how we engage in this type of context, because the Western idea of land ownership may fall away almost entirely because it just doesn't apply. And what we've seen, for example, is that it's very easy to retrofit running water as well as electricity into such a context. Retrofitting sewage and grey water treatment is near impossible. And I think we have lessons to learn from Europe. How did Europe do this prior to the 20th century in their unplanned settlements? And examples are places like the Cotswolds in England, which are really pretty and beautiful, but I don't think they were planned either. So I think there are some learnings from your context, but by the same token, I think the lessons to be learned can't be applied directly at a 21st century level necessarily, because your societies are not structured in this way anymore. So governance is critical, absolutely. But it's really interesting when we have multiple systems of governance all straddling the same environment and trying to figure out and work out who's in charge. This can be a challenge.
Thanks, Craig, and thank you. You brought us neatly, I think, onto the main thrust of this session, which is about how international cooperation and learning can best support social innovations to address water challenges. Uta, turning back to you at the moment, where do you think the international cooperation actions can best support social innovations in the water field, please?
Yeah, I think it comes back to not just talking to the converted as we're doing here. I think we're all very passionate and we're perhaps easily convinced. We even come up with overlapping definitions and say, hooray, social innovation is the solution. Yeah, let's go for it. But how do we actually go for it? I think there's quite pervasive awareness raising is required, and international cooperation can provide that vehicle for it. So let me use the example of F-Reliance again. The concept of social innovation that we had wasn't just something we wrote up in a paper tiger and put it on a shelf, but it was really pervasive to all the practices that we used to bring this network of networks together. We wrote what we called social innovation fact sheets. So for very specific technological solutions, we did the whole swirl. What does it mean for governance? What does it mean for capacity development? How can we foster the private sector? So we have a vast range of these social innovation fact sheets for participatory monitoring, irrigation solutions, flood risk measures, etc. You have it. So that makes it very tangible and concrete. But we also didn't leave it there. Amongst the massive open online courses and MOOC that we ran, we actually ran with the concept and asked our participants then to say, put your social innovation in this context. What does it mean? What does it mean for each of those dimensions? So we could slowly permeate the thinking and the understanding of the various stakeholders that we need, because I think that's also a lesson that came out of the first session was really we need all the stakeholders around the table. We don't just need to ask some end users and then fix things as solution providers. We need the governance context, we need the funders, and we need the policymakers, the regulators, and civil society at the table, as Craig mentioned, not once, but continuously. So we need a continuous dialogue. And I think that's where we can explore international cooperation with some of the examples, some of the ways in which we've done this in concrete ways in F-Reliance.
Thanks, Uta. Before I bring Octavia in on this one, I just wanted, there's a comment in the chat function from Veronique. There are polls which have been launched at the moment. These are either under the polls function on your Zoom screen or under the More button on the Zoom screen. You'll find it there. If while you're listening at the moment you want to fill out those polls, I think we'd be really appreciative of that, just to see what comes out. We can take that forward as a discussion in the next session. Octavia, from your perspective, going to the same question that Uta just gave such a lovely answer to. Where do you see international cooperation actions best focused to support social innovations, please?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I'd like to go back to a keynote speech this morning by Dan Dutoit, who was excellent in why international cooperation is for. And I think that he highlighted a number of gains that would have with international cooperation, including the exchange of good practices, the fact that we can scale up what Jutta was saying about raising awareness of the issues we have around these points. But I think that we should, maybe if I can summarize in 4 issues, I would say, first of all, technological solutions. And technological solutions usually can be exported easily, relatively easily, but they can. Capacity development is essential in international cooperation, and I think that this is a main issue as well. The fact that you involve as many stakeholders as possible. Jutta was mentioning regulators, your funders, end users, citizens in the end, or researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, and all these, we need to have them, the private sector. And I would say, finally, what is more difficult to export, but at least you can understand which are the lessons, both positive and negative, of other experiences when it comes to governance. I mean, governance is much more difficult to export because it depends very much on the social and political structure. But I think that here that there is a huge potential for international cooperation. Of course, there is an obvious one when it comes to transboundary waters. I mean, Egyptians and Ethiopians and Sudanese know a lot about this, but we very often in our countries, we have waters that are transboundary, and therefore we need to, and when it comes to underground water, that's obvious, that we need also to solve, and we need to solve it through international cooperation. I would stop here and leave for others to give more ideas.
Thanks, Octavie. Jean, in your view and your experience of working in an international research environment, what would your thoughts be on this, please?
Yes, it's difficult to have new ideas after the brilliant presentation of Dan this morning and the 2 first panelists. And I don't know what I can say. Perhaps we can see that international cooperation provides a bilateral or multilateral framework for water management and related innovation. And we can see that in Africa, all the major basin agencies between countries, we saw that all these watershed organizations are very resilient to conflict between countries and are never challenged. We can quote the Nile Authority or the Great Lakes Authority in East Africa, which have always allowed cooperation between countries that are often in conflict, or also in the Senegal Valley Organization in West Africa during the crisis between Senegal and Mauritania. The 2 countries didn't stop to speak and to have cooperation. Perhaps also, I want to give you an example of particular experience of international cooperation about financing water innovation is the decentralized cooperation. And we can speak about in France, the Oudin-Satini law in 2005 established a framework for decentralized cooperation in water and sanitation, covering the 6 French basin agencies, and local authorities will be able to dedicate up to 1% of their water, of their budget to water, to international development in water and sanitation. And the first year, it was about $37 million US, who were committed to this international cooperation on innovation and with a very light calcul. You can see that if we do the same thing on all the developing country water agencies, we can have more than 3 billion each year of for financing international this kind of international innovation. After on the other things, I agree with the former speaker and with the excellent presentation given by Dan.
Wonderful, thank you, Jean, and that's a nice example you provided. Craig, you're part of the Water JPI, which is international cooperation as it stands. What's your practical experience and practical advice around how such actions can best support social innovations in this area?
Yeah, practically, flexibility has been key to making a success of our project, and flexibility on almost every level. We're working with 7 different bureaucracies in our project because we have 3 different funders. We have the BMBF, we have FORMAS, we have the Water Research Commission, we have the Water JPI, and then we have 3 organizations which we are employed by. So there's a Helmholtz Institute, there's my university, and a university in Sweden. And just managing and learning the tap dance around, like getting through 7 different bureaucracies, has been a real challenge. I think the advice on making the project successful has been to firstly establish trust with your institution as well as with your partners. And particularly with my institution, you know, cost control and procurement bureaucracy is difficult in every country, never mind mine. But we're trying to ensure that the money we spend is spent in the community in which we're working. So we're building these systems. I really don't want to use a preferred vendor to go and get people from not in our community to come and build the things and purchase the items from somewhere else. So the first thing is to actually approach like our university management and get special dispensation to pay people in cash. And this is not an easy thing to do in any bureaucratic system, because bureaucracies like receipts that are printed, and they don't like handwritten invoices from an invoice book. But I guess we've been able to do this by being really transparent with all the different parties around where is the spend going, and taking photographs so that when you get challenged on where's your spend going, you can actually say, here's an example of it. These are the people who are benefiting directly from the JPI funds. And in many instances, I think this was really valuable, and it's brought us a lot of credibility within our community, because we were building during COVID and just prior to COVID, where in many instances, there was no other income coming into for some of these people that were doing the building work. And I think they valued us as partners in their community, because we've injected probably 30 to 40,000 euros now through this and other co-levered funds for this project directly into the community. But again, managing these multi-layered bureaucracies is really difficult, but it's doable. It's very, very doable. And then the other thing that's really helped us is having a partnership of equals between the North and the South partners. So we're the PI, we're controlling the project in many ways, but the North gets really interesting science because we have an amazing laboratory to do the work in, and we can send samples overseas for analysis, for instance. So it's been such a win for all different participants, for all of us, because we're doing what I believe is meaningful work, and we're getting good science, and we're supporting a community. So yeah, but the key element here is actually trust and flexibility and being able to just change course at a moment's notice, and because anything can happen at any time. Our community is probably 40 to 50% more densely populated than when we started our project 3 years ago, which gives you an indication of just how rapidly things can change on the ground. So those are my I guess the things that I can say. That's how we've managed to get it going. But it's really not easy when you have reports to write and you have funders who need to know where their funds are going and things like that. But openness and honesty, I think, is and also willingness to apologize if things don't work out as we said they were going to be, which is also difficult sometimes to accept, but that's the reality.
Thank you, Craig. That's fantastic. I think you bring out really well how social innovation isn't just something which happens in abstract. It actually it has to happen throughout the whole system. Yeah, if this is really going to come forward from there. I think that's really powerful. I've taken the liberty, Veronique, of launching the polls, so people can now respond to them. They'll be open, I think. I'll close them. If it's me that closes them, I'll close them in about 20 minutes. So people have time to respond to it. We can see them already ticking over at the moment, so that's great. Uta, I wanted to bring you back in, if I may. One of the conversations that was said early on, Octavie highlighted this, Jean highlighted this about the importance of data from there. But actually, there's also a lot of discussion about the potential for citizen-based science and increasing citizen engagement. How do you think that local knowledge can be mobilized to improve access to data and user experiences to really promote social innovation, please, in your experience?
Sure. Well, I think there's no shortage of definitions of citizen science, and the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Let's say there are some people who are very focused on the data generation potential of citizen science, but there are also those, such as in my group at IHE and also in my professorship at University of Gothenburg, that we take more social innovation perspective and really see this is a new form of stakeholder engagement. Open science was mentioned earlier on. This is a parallel movement, and citizen science arguably actually provides one of the key mechanisms to really truly opening up the scientific process, bringing in stakeholders who have previously not been involved, not only in the data collection, but in the agenda setting. What are the research questions? What are the issues? What are the actual insights coming out of it? And how do we do outreach and lobbying and policy change with this? So the crucial part here is that the devil is in the detail of how we do citizen science. And in our work, we've very much focused on how can we co-design citizen science, such as they really deliver meaningful social innovations, particularly in a bottom-up, community-based setting. In the Ground Truth 2.0, we've entirely focused on setting up such a methodology, testing it in Africa and in Europe. We've validated it, and we've demonstrated the power of giving it to the people, if you like, not imposing thou shall monitor water quality or thou shall monitor flood risk parameters, but actually saying what are the issues in your community and how could a citizen science approach help? So it's very much taking the multi-stakeholder approach to a practical level within a citizen science context. So my mantra would be, yes, of course, citizen science can deliver data, complementary data in areas that otherwise are difficult to get to, et cetera, but I would be in favor of not reducing it to only data collection, but really seeing the much broader potential, which we can unleash if we carefully think of how we do this.
Thanks, Uta. I think that also resonates with what Craig was saying about openness and trust and actually engaging with those who we're working from there. I think that's really helpful. Octavie, what would your thoughts be around this concept of citizen engagement? How is Prima engaging in this debate at the moment, please?
Thank you very much. Well, in fact, let me just say very briefly that I really liked the points of Craig on what it means in practice, because it shows that the challenge, that he really has faced these challenges, and we have time later on. I'd like to just point out a couple of things. On the question, the citizen engagement, for us, the best example are living labs. Living labs, in principle, were set up for real life tests where users and experts could co-create. Now it turns out to go to ecosystems in which that there is co-creation of businesses and governance models. So I think that Living Labs is a very good example of having citizens engage and users engage all sorts of stakeholders. And you mentioned the data, and I think that it is essential that the data could be provided by citizens as well. We have a project called eGroundwater, which is a PRIMA project, in which, well, for groundwater, it is very important data availability, because otherwise it's impossible to manage groundwater. And these projects aims to support the participatory groundwater management through citizen science, because the data come not just from sensors and earth observation, but also by the farmers themselves. And just with a smartphone application, they know what's going on, and the farmer can assess the needs he or she may have, and guidance on crop choices, on irrigation management, and new management procedures. So this is a project that, and as an example, that exemplifies the involvement in the citizen, not only and the farmer, not only in providing data, but also on receiving feedback from this data for his decisions to take. So I think that this is also very important. I'll stop here, because I think that is very important that we have some time to discuss later on, if there is time.
Thanks, Octavi. There will be time, and it would be great if you could stimulate that conversation when we get to that stage as well. Jean, I'll turn to you at the moment for the same question around how you see the benefits of citizen-based science and citizen engagement in promoting social innovation in the areas of water and the challenges there.
Yes, I am completely online with the former speaker. Perhaps I can add that in my institution, the IRD, we have this thing about sustainable science, implying a lot of all the stakeholders in the research program, and also to have a participatory approach on all science. And we develop some observatory, some climate observatory or water observatory with schools, with all the citizens. And certainly that smartphones are a very nice tool for that, because you can develop an application to give some services to people, but in return you can have some scientific data, scientific information given back, and we develop more and more this kind of application on smartphone for example, for agriculture. For a farmer, you can help them to have some agrometeorological data, but when they have this agrometeorological data, they can do a photo for something and send it to you, and you can have the amount of rainfall in their farm, or things like that. I guess that's the participatory science and the sustainable research will help in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Uta has put a few links into the chat function. Hopefully those who are in Cairo in the hall will be able to pick up on these details as well. at a later stage, or will be these details will be made available from there. So Uta, thanks for sharing those documents. And I think, Jean, you highlight a really important thing about innovations. They lead to new innovations as well. That we have new smartphones that led to whole new ways of working, of operating, and highlights new opportunities perhaps for social innovation coming forward. So this is always a world which is moving. We have just under 10 minutes left of this aspect of the session. So Craig, I'd like to turn to you if I may, again, just in terms of thinking about the key lessons and the practices that we can share between Africa and Europe. You highlighted a couple a moment ago, but in terms of, we talk a lot about the benefits of sharing knowledge, of exchanging practices. What are some of the key lessons you think, building upon what you've told us already?
The key lessons. I think for me, the key lessons are, one would definitely be around respect in both directions between Europe and between Africa. I'm very privileged in my own way in that I have a Western type of a background, and yet I'm African. My grandparents were all African, so I have a fairly nuanced and understanding of both the Western and the African context, having lived here all my life. For me, it's about having respect for the African context when you're talking to Africa. That it's hard sometimes for like Western players to understand the difficulties with working with the systems that we're working with and the complexity of the systems, because they are somewhat chaotic in comparison to a European system. And it's to not judge the complexity or the chaos, that chaotic nature. In many instances, that chaotic nature is what makes Africa such a vibrant and interesting continent. And it's one of the things I truly love about living here and working here. But it means that we have to be flexible again because of that chaotic nature of whatever could happen at any given time. I think your question was the key learnings. I think some of the other key learnings are really around trying to figure out who can do what at what different time. So I find Europe is often really strong, or the global north is very strong at doing some of the really hard science, like the detailed analytical work. We don't necessarily have the skills or the analytical equipment to do this, but the converse is that we have a really interesting laboratory to work within whilst doing what I regard as really meaningful research, where we actually are trying to benefit society and raise society. So those are the key lessons around understanding where the values lie and where everyone can actually add their value. But again, it's all around discussion and talking and being open in this communication thing. And I think sometimes that's not always easy for scientists. That's often a lot easier for social scientists and political scientists, as opposed to scientists and engineers who often prefer to do maths and science. I see Uta has her hand up. I don't know if that's for me, Uta, or if it's for Adrian.
Well, I wanted to follow up on what you said, but I'll wait for the chair to give me the floor.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, Adrian, I guess those are my key learnings. And my key learnings are also just to remain flexible. And I mean, I'm going on about this, but today we've started building our 4th constructed wetland in Setswetla, which is an informal settlement north of Alexandra Township. It's located about 5 kilometers from Sandton, which is the economic hub of Africa. And it's a settlement which is built in a floodplain through like land reclamation techniques of legal tipping of rubble into the floodplain of a river, which tends to flood in the summer months. And we're busy with there this morning, and we've got a whole team active. But we do this just because we have a team who's willing to do it. And yeah, and it's really exciting, but it's also sometimes terrifying because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to find there tomorrow, and it might not be what I planned.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of what social innovation can be all about from there. It's not always what we plan, but sometimes the best things come from the unplanned activities. So thank you for those reflections. Uta, I'll give you the floor now. So
thank you. Thank you.
Reply to Craig, but also then add your thoughts about key
Absolutely, because indeed one of my lessons would be appreciation and patience for the cultural differences between not only African and European partners. And again, let me use the example of Afro-Alliance, which was a sort of microcosmos of international collaboration, in this new way. Not just bringing Africans and Europeans together, which many projects do, but just such vastly different backgrounds and disciplines. So social scientists, natural scientists, but scientists, policymakers, civil society, utilities, local authorities, you can't get more diverse. So we've had our times to learn, indeed the African way and understanding and appreciation for each other's ways of thinking. So I think that is a crucial starting point that is really important to take forward into whichever project context. A second learning is, yes, a lot of the work that we've done in Afro-Alliance is, what are the gaps, what are the capacity needs, etc. But one of the insights permeating throughout this 5-year collaboration was also, it's not as though there's nothing there. There are lots of ideas. There are, lots of insights. There are very different ways of working in communities already, etc. That African stakeholders can build on, and they should do so not only in this sort of demand-driven way of doing social innovation, but also, let's say, at the policy table, several layers up, where research agendas are being negotiated, etc. So really stand up for the needs, for the insights, for the local knowledge that's already in place, and for the ideas, let's say, outside the science system, outside the ivory tower, which are really ready there to be picked up, but they need the conditions. And my last point is, yes, we need to talk about these conditions, because yes, Craig, you made the point very clearly of what implementation and procurement is like, at the very local level under the umbrella of your organization. But again, let's channel up the chain to the funders. And I think we have to be careful here to say we can't just play lip service to co-design. Yeah, isn't it so wonderful? And ask your stakeholders what they want. Well, if I truly co-design, I can't tell you which partners I need. I can't tell you which technical solutions providers I need throughout the course of a 5-year project. I need funders who give me the room to truly co-design and come up with solutions that meet local demands, and I cannot pre-code them. I can, yes, roughly say which societal challenges I address, but I cannot tell you which technical solution will really hit the nail for what the local needs are. So that would be my appeal, let's say at several levels up again for the funders, take a close look in the mirror. If you truly believe in demand-driven approaches, social innovation that is demand-driven, etc., it comes with implications in terms of flexibility of how you roll out the money and make it available. Thank you.
Thank you, Uta. And I think there will be many of us who will echo that call from there. And so thank you for putting it so eloquently. Jean, I will give you the last word on lessons that you might like to draw out from your understanding, experience of what you've seen around social innovation. How best can we transfer knowledge exchange and new information between our two continents?
Yes, I guess after the words of Uta, I have nothing to add. It was very true what she said, and I saw that also when following some experience done at the township of Khayelitsha in the east of Cape Town, and there was a lot of study from the Columbia University about how what are the impacts and the implication of water governance structure, and what the engagement in decision-making processes through a community-driven research can bring. It was very important to see how the people also, because participating to the project and to to develop where we put the tapes, where you put the lines, what is the access for the toilets, how everything changed. They changed their position on the government, on the states. The states was not only a repressive thing, but a service provider. And also, when I left, there was a kind of test of a new water meter, where you can buy the cubic meters of water for your house, and all the your house can be supplied. But when you finish your credit, you can have almost a little bit of water in a tap down with a very low pressure, but enough of water to do the needs, the principal needs. And why this kind of innovation on the water can avoid to destroy the types and to have bad actions. And I guess that it is possible to share with the community and to implement a project with all the stakeholders, like Uta said, not only the researcher, not only the decider, but not only the community, but to mix all these things and to have and to go not only on frugal innovation, almost on a very important innovation. For that, for example, to have this water meter developed for a society in a place where often the water is more expensive than in the nice parts of Cape Town. That's that I guess that yes, if we have the last word is to say that the social innovation and equitable partnership can bring something new.
Thank you, Jean. I think that's a fine sentiment to end on. I think what's been fascinating about this panel is that most of the conversation has not been about technology. It's about the way that we use technology, who uses that technology, what is the end goal of that technology as well. Just going back to how Uta introduced her thoughts around social innovation from there. It's about flexibility, respect, listening as well, the role of multiple actors bringing in different perspectives. If we can bring these things, elements together, then actually we can change the world from there. But without these things, we will fall short of those goals. So I think that's a great note to end on. Uta, Jean, Octavie, and Craig, thank you for sharing your experiences with us. This is, for me, it's been fascinating. I hope the audience have also enjoyed this, both in person in Cairo and also online. We've got over 36 responses to the polls now. That's good. So I'll leave those open for another, shall we say 3 minutes, just to see what comes forward from there. And I think what we're going to do now is try to move to a discussion, if possible. So if anybody wants to put their hand up or wishes to put a question in the chat, and I think, Salma, I think this is involving your panel and mine and whoever is around, I think we can take this conversation forward. I'm not sure how this is going to work, so let's see what happens from here. Am I in the right territory here, Veronique?
It's okay. If somebody raises his hand, I will let you know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So, Octavie, you've raised your hand. I'll give you the floor for the moment, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to just comment on some of the issues that Craig said about the cooperation, the challenges and lessons from cooperation. I can only speak on the experience of Prima, which is, it's limited to the African of the north, the African countries of the north and the east of the Mediterranean. But let me say that these ideas are very powerful. The first one I'd like to pick up is the one on equal partnership. And I think that this is the basis of Prima. Prima exists because we want to build on an equal partnership. It is not a scheme of cooperation or development, but a scheme of partnership, equal partnership. So that's, for us, is essential. The second thing is transparency. I think that is so important, transparency, that we show not only what are the results of the investments on, but also the process, how we reach decisions and which way, so that we have a very transparent way of behaving. I think that this is very important. The third thing is the trust and flexibility. This is not that easy, because here we often go through or we have hurdles coming from national regulations that are not easy to overcome. But I must say that in that sense, Africans used to be much more creative than Europeans. They know better how to circumvent these hurdles that which usually appear. So I think that this is something they need to learn from how to have this flexibility in practice. Uta was mentioning respect the African context. I think that this is good. I mean, patience on the cultural differences. This is something good. I would like to add a lesson that I think that Europeans can export to Africans, and this is not a matter of science maturity or having more money, but the very important aspect of integration. And the integration, the North-North integration, I think is a good example that if this integration would improve much more in the South, but not South-North, but South-South as well, this has big advantages. And I think that it is a message that we need to convey as much as possible. What this Warren Dance was saying on science and diplomacy for science and so on. I mean, all these concepts, having a much closer integration from the countries of the countries in the South, I think it would foster enormously research and innovation for the whole region, North and South. Thanks.
Thanks, Octavi. Any other comments anybody wants to raise, or any questions that somebody would want to put forward? We're going to close the polls in about 2 or 3 minutes, so last chances to fill that in as well. Craig, I might ask you for your thoughts in a moment, but Octavia, if I could just come back to you on one of the things you say there, because I think you raised some very important points. One of the things we haven't talked about is building capacity, how we stimulate capacity building in different contexts. One of the challenges that I've often found, I'm going to personalize this at the moment, is who do we work with as well? And there's sometimes I feel that there's a risk that we work with the same partners. It's the same few places in Europe, the same few places in different parts of Africa who come forwards. And your appeal, I think, to South-South cooperation is a great idea, something everybody would agree with. But do we have to, how can we engender the capacity to stimulate that as well? So there's an equal playing field going forwards.
Let me just...
Craig or Salma has some thoughts on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. This is not an easy thing to increase the capacity. And one needs to keep in mind that it takes a long time. I mean, patience, as Uta was recommending, here we need patience again. And let me just put as an example that we have in Europe at the very beginning when the new countries, well, even the Southerners, when they enter into the Commission, into the Union, into the European Union, it took them 20, 25 years to reach a level in which they would, let's say, get projects of at the same rate or yes, a proportion as the older one. So it took them 25 years of learning and participating. And it is nonsense to create a second league for those less advantages, because they will never make it if they keep on the comfort zone in which they only compete among them. So they have to be prepared and fail and fail and fail several times until they master how to participate, how to work with others in scientific projects, how to participate with others in innovation projects. I think that on top of making or having capacity building programs for, say, several countries, what is very, very important is that in every project and in every research innovation project, wherever and whatever this project is about, there is always a part of capacity building in the project. So developing skills in the project so that the project itself develops some capacity building, at least for those closer to the project, being farmers, being entrepreneurs, being whatever, decision makers. There has to be a part of not only raising awareness, but capacity building. I think that we should have the same way that we are praising now to embed in all projects social sciences. In every single scientific project, we need to have to embed social sciences and humanities. Same way we need to have a capacity building in all projects.
Thanks, Octavi. Uta, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, capacity building, we could argue is the core business of IHE Delft. We try to strengthen the water sector in the global south, have done so for more than 7 decades. I can't claim I've been around that long, but I know I've been around long enough to know that we hold an entire symposium on this every 5 or 6 years. And we've had 6 symposia on the question of how do we strengthen capacity. So there's evolving understanding. If there's one permeating insight that still needs to be carried out into the world, apparently, is that we shouldn't reduce capacity development to education and training. So as long as we focus only on individual people, as important as that is, and we do that here in Delft, it's just as important to work with partners, work with organizations in the countries themselves, and really embed the strength and capacity, not only in people with new certificates and new technical knowledge, but looking at how routines need to be changed, how our staff turnover can be addressed, what knowledge management practices need to be instilled. And that's the same whether we're talking about a ministry, an educational institution, an NGO, whoever our partners are. Those are some cross-cutting, indeed, social science principles that we need to use to really embed the capacity in the countries.
Thanks, Uta. I don't know whether Craig or yeah, Craig, please. And Sama, would you like to contribute to this as well? And then I think we'll close and move on to Veronica and others. Craig, please. Oh, and then John.
Adrian. Yeah, I mean, working at a university, my primary job is capacity development. What I'm finding is, I mean, I'll give you a good example of this, is I'm currently in preparations of a proposal with Danida for a separate grant. And it's very difficult to nest master's or PhD scholarships into these things because of the Danish rules around PhD candidates having to be employed and pay welfare and tax and all of these things. So they don't like that very much. Whereas from my perspective, I'm often able to get master's or PhD candidates supervised and funded at lower rates, primarily because our cost of living is a fraction of what it is in Denmark, for example. So it's around like relaxing these constraints from different funding societies, because then we can actually get that through to our students. And certainly my students, I mean, my students are desperate for capacity development. And what I mean by that is many of them come from highly impoverished backgrounds, which are deeply rural, and all they want is the opportunity to get into the education system. And they will often do that with very notionally small sums of money. And suddenly you have a graduate from a top 200 or top 300 university who has a master's or a PhD degree, which is internationally recognized. Capacity development is not expensive, provided we relax the constraints of what we're expecting at an international level. And for me, I'm really strongly in support of anything that will develop primary school, high school, universities of technology. It is the only way to develop our societies, and they don't have to be engineers. I'm equally for students to go off and do degrees in English or whatever, primarily because any person who has a degree has a better way of thinking and they have a more nuanced understanding of the world. So my JPI project has some very unusual. We have a master's student in industrial psychology, and we've got master's students in geography and PhD candidates in engineering. And we're mixing and matching all of these different people, primarily because we're able to attract other funds into the project to support this, notwithstanding the funds that we originally got because of this capacity development thing. And I am a little concerned one day when I'm going to have to try and figure out how to do all the reporting around this. But quite frankly, if I have sort of 8 or 10 postgraduate candidates that I've trained through my program, I'm not really too concerned. I can, for me, that's far more important. But it's around being relaxed, knowing the constraints, working with the constraints, and pushing back at the bureaucracies that say you aren't able to do this. Or saying, fine, if you're not able to let us do this, we'll have to attract side funding, and just doing it anyway.
Thank you, Craig. And I think you made a very important point there about many of these rules are coming from the context in which the funder is operating, rather than thinking about the context in which the project is perhaps operating as well. John, I think that would be brilliant. Can we keep it relatively short so we can then just...
Yes, no problem. I just Googled social innovation and training, and you don't know how many courses I found, courses in business schools or courses online courses, and very often mixed with courses on social entrepreneurship. And I guess there is something between these two kind of training and the development of social entrepreneurship and social innovation. I don't know if there is something very online with Water project, but surely.
Adrian, I'm really sorry, but the time is almost up. We have to wrap up and finish before 4. So
perfect. That is a perfect note to end on. So from the panel side and the discussion side, thank you so much to everybody that's participated. Salma, thank you for hosting from the hall, and Veronique, over to you, I think. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Adrian. It was very, very interesting and very active. Thank you all the panel members. It was very insightful. I think now we have some, I think I'm going to do the wrap up, Juliette. Is it right? I'm going to try to wrap up all those great ideas. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to wrap up from what Dan Dutoit said with this very inspiring keynote, and also the two panel discussion with alignment and also, of course, the social innovation panel discussion. So what we can see is that strengthening EU and Africa cooperation in the water field for research and innovation is very much needed, and if we really want to achieve that, we have to build upon the existing partnership, and we can say that Prima definitely, and also a Free Alliance, have a lot of experience in that. So I would like just to sum up: respect the African context and be flexible to be able to benefit from each other, understanding where the values lie and combine the African EU values to reach out solutions for the water and research and innovation. And we can see that to explore some tools and opportunities that we could use between Africa and Europe. So Dan told us to do not be afraid of failing, and to try is already great. So we're going to really try to develop some tools like living labs, co-creation of living labs, is interesting, knowledge hubs also, and to tackle in those tools precise topics, like Maurice Herral said. This is a time to be focused because we have huge challenges ahead of us in water scarcity. So we have to capitalize on projects' results from both continents, Africa and EU, and to have hands-on to tackle these results. There is a huge tool that we can use, which is capacity development. Capacity development for social innovation. EU needs to learn also from Africa and about this social innovation, to technical train people, to capacity development also for this entire water and research and innovation field. And like Craig said, it is not expensive, so we can go ahead for that. When we want to exchange ideas and best practices, we have policy briefs. And Nienke told us about the political support. And there is some political support. There is also funding support from the European Commission. Political support with the two summits that is going to happen next year in Mediterranean, of course, area, but also with the African Union. Also to align with and to build upon existing partnerships. And a Free Alliance, Prima, and Water JPI have experience with Africa to some extent. To benefit also, very important, to benefit from the Africa's creativity, to really do not be afraid to move on this cooperation with different countries in Africa. To support the development of international cooperation strategies, we have lessons learned from Europe. Europe has a great extent of experience with multilateral consortia also with Africa, with the Prima and all that. So we have to work together about that, to include NGOs and also enterprises. And Ute really showed us how much it's important to bring the private sector, to bring solutions to the base of pyramid. To increase awareness, of course, civil society stakeholders, they have to be wrapped up in our adventure with this cooperation between Africa and EU. And of course, to be open, to open science, and not only to have this citizen science, to have open data, but everything should be really thoughtful and thought to be in an open way to share those data, those databases, and those results. And before giving the floor to Mohammed for the final remarks, I would like just to add a very important thing. Everything takes time, and like Octavie said, we have to be patient. But we have to work together with patience, of course, with respect, and for enhancing this cooperation between Africa and Europe. We have to appreciate our cultural differences, and this is key for us to be transparent and to really be multicultural. Thank you again, Adrian, Salma, and the entire panels today, Dan, and thank you, Prima, of course, and the ISRT. And the floor now is to Professor Mohammed for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate all the panelists and those who came to us. It was extremely important, and actually I adapted the closing remarks according to what I heard, which was very important for us. And I will take some points also, as you did, but in another way, as Dan and others were saying, I could tell you that it's very important. Science is very important. Reciprocity is extremely important. We have to put the SDGs in front of our eyes. We had a lot of challenges, especially putting concrete actions with plans. We need to have more coordination and avoid duplication. We have to have real co-ownership and resources for funding, and we have to leverage synergies, reconcile ambition, and have to adapt the open science concept. We have to align the programs between Africa and the EU. Yes, we need to speak together, exchange ideas, but it's very important to agree and implement and use the tools that we have to implement our actions. Water is becoming rare and demands increasing challenges, but there is a gap of research. That's why we have to work on the national level. We have to diffuse innovation and make science available and depend on the cluster of projects. And this shows how important projects are when we engage many stakeholders in an innovative way, and we don't forget about policy makers and capitalize on other projects. Creativity is very important. We need to work together and talk together and to use available tools and not to forget about the NGOs. And also, it's very challenging how to put all our ideas into long-term action, which is sustainable. We have to have a positive impact on our society. It's not only about technologies, but it's more complex. How we interact together, we use different systems and set of values, and how to protect our resources also is very important, and how we can gather ideas, data, and we need to invest more in data. There are a lot of lessons that could be learned from the experience in Europe, but this not to apply directly, but we have to discuss with the African countries how this could be implemented in their countries. Flexibility and practicality is very important. We have to know that we are dealing with some bureaucracy, and we have to know what's happening on ground in different countries, because there are still gaps and capacity needs for all countries. And I will end with some words that Octavie mentioned: transparency, trust, flexibility, integration, and we have to be more innovative in all our techniques and to develop new degrees and new ways to tackle our problems. We have to finish by 4, and we finish by 4, and thank you so much, and looking forward for more to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. I'm honored to be here today in the and active participation with this amazing workshop and this very insightful workshop. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you soon. Yeah.